MRO has been doing, and particularly with the minerals, is point to places where we know there's been water interacting with the surface, and then we can send Curiosity to that place and determine really what was the history of that spot.
Yeah, and just to add to what you said, Michael, with the capabilities of MRO, we're able to pose very detailed questions for future investigation because we will have seen the rock outcrops at the scale of meters. And when a final selection of a landing site is made, Curiosity will be able to go to outcrop number 1 and then outcrop number 2 and address a pre-planned, really well thought out set of questions with this very capable instrument package.
Okay, well, this next question is going to put you gentlemen on the spot here. It's with all three of you all responding on your personal views on, is there life or could there have been life on Mars from the data that you have seen so far? What are your personal feelings? We'll start with you, Rich.
Well, I definitely think there could have been life on Mars. Whether there is or not, I think, is still a question to be determined. One thing that we've learned since the Viking days was we thought we could go with Viking, land on the surface, scoop up some soil, and if there was life anywhere on the planet, it would also be in that scooped up material. And so we could test that soil and look for it. We didn't even find any organic compounds in that material. But we now understand that environment a lot better. And we've also seen from our understanding of life on Earth that life can populate some pretty extreme environments given a chance. So yes, I think life could have developed on Mars. Whether it's still there today, I'm not quite so sure. We haven't seen any evidence of it at the surface. If it were really like the Earth, there would have been some surface expression of that. And yet, most of the life on the Earth, by mass, is actually underground in the subsurface, in the ground itself. So there might even be life today.
Michael?
Yeah, whatever he said. Yeah, and in fact, I want to emphasize one thing, and that is one of the things we're finding out by exploring places here on Earth is that there is the possibility of life. Here on this planet, we find life that can be independent of the surface and surviving in different processes. So the idea that life not being apparent on the surface of Mars doesn't mean that there isn't necessarily life below the surface, because you can have life below the surface independent, not having any surface expression. It's interesting to be asked, well, what do you think? You know, what are the odds that there's life on Mars or there was life on Mars? Every time we go and look at some new data from the planet, I've gotten more encouraged that the possibility for life, at least in Mars, pass. A couple of things that have happened in the last year or so in terms of what we're learning about the planet is, you know, one, seeing active processes today, the potential of something flowing on the surface and water being a very good candidate for it happening today, and then also the variability in terms of space and time of finding methane in the atmosphere of Mars. All of those point to active processes today that could also indicate that there could be life on the planet today. But it's very difficult, though, to sort that out and come up with the processes that are either physical or biological, and then actually go and get evidence of whether or not something is happening today in terms of biological. One of the things that I wanted to also emphasize is that, as Rich mentioned in his talk, during the same time that life started on Earth, Mars was potentially wetter and warmer. And because it doesn't have plate tectonics, some of those rocks are still lying on the surface of Mars. So one of the things that's really great about Mars is that you can go and pick the right rock, and it may show you what was going on in the early solar system when life started on Earth. And so at the worst, it would tell you what the starting ingredients are for life in the solar system, or at best, it may show you that life might have also started on Mars.
Scott?
Yeah. I think the question of is there or was there life elsewhere in the solar system is so fundamental to who we are as human beings. You know, it's a deep question that it certainly keeps me going. And when I think about life on Earth and comparing it to elsewhere in the solar system, I tend to think about the Natural History Museum and looking back at the timeline of the evolution of life and the dinosaurs, and before that, the fish in the ocean, and eventually back to just single-celled organisms. And to add to what Michael said, it's encouraging. There's encouraging evidence that makes the pursuit of present-day life very worthwhile. But when you look back in the past, you can actually see a pretty decent record of the past environments preserved on Mars' surface. And when you look at them, you can see some of them, for example, some of the candidates for the MSL landing site, where you see evidence of standing water that was a very benign environment, and you have the possibility to be able to drive up to a rock outcrop and drill into it and look for that fossil evidence on the surface. So I think that there's very encouraging evidence to look not just in the present but also in the past for what came before during the planet's evolution.
I'd like to just also note that scientifically, perhaps even psychologically, if life didn't develop on Mars, understanding why is important for our extrapolations about what might be happening on planets around other stars and such. Because it had water, it had soil, it had sunlight, there was energy, both internal and external. Why didn't that prebiotic chemistry take the next step? And understanding that is important scientifically.
All right, well, that's going to do it for us today. Obviously, to get more details on MRO and the MSL or Curiosity, go to www.nasa.gov. For the folks here in the audience, we have 3D glasses. If you want to see the Martian landscape in 3D, right outside the auditorium to your left, get some 3D glasses and see the atmosphere, the landscape in 3D. Pretty amazing stuff. And I want to thank you all for joining us. There won't be a test, but Mars is truly an incredible planet, and I want to thank the gentleman here for Rich for your presentation and the Q&A with Michael and Scott joining Rich. And always remember, ladies and gentlemen, science never sleeps. Thanks for joining us.
You're watching NASA Television, awarded an Emmy for Lifetime Achievement by the Mid-South chapter of the National Academy.